Tonight we're going to focus on the alias Inside Looking, and we're also going to focus on BK's questionnaire that he posted on Reddit. And we're going to explore some of the questions. We're going to talk about it. I hope everybody's having a great week, and I hope that you enjoy this because this is strictly my opinion, and everything that I talk about here is alleged. So let's get on with it, shall we? Okay, if y'all remember early on in the case, this screen name, Inside Looking, was on the Reddit post. This one was 16 days, I guess, after the murders. So let's go ahead and read it. It says, speculation. Killer parked behind the house. Approached property through the tree line. He entered the sliding door and left it open. Committed the murders and exited the sliding door. One knife, according to coroner's statement. Time of the murder was approximately 3:20 a.m. to 3:40 a.m. According to the car fleeing the scene and on camera on Highway 8 approximately at 3:45. Vehicle left skid marks upon exit. Please see photos below for more information. And somebody commented, dude is solving his own crime. Psycho. So let's talk about this a little bit. It's a very detailed, very descriptive outline of the murder. And it's also been said or speculated that Brian was using this screen name to communicate with people on the internet. I know another name, the Papa Roger one, was discounted as not being true. But this one I never heard was discounted as not being true. So whenever they confiscated his computer, all the information from his social media accounts, I'm sure they'll be able to tell if he actually was communicating with people with this screen name. How ironic would it be that Brian would be communicating online, presenting facts that nobody knew at that time? How would anybody know these things? Even though he starts out, or she, whoever wrote this, even though they start out speculation, killer parked behind the house, approached the property through the tree lines. Well, we've discussed that. It was documented that he entered the sliding door, and the bushy eyebrow dude exited through the sliding door. The knife, I don't remember hearing that from the coroner about one knife. The time of the murder, when this first started off, they said it was between 3 and 4. They were saying that everywhere. The only reason that they changed that is based on Dylan and Bethany's downloads of their cell phone. The car fleeing the scene on camera on Highway 8 at 3:45. Supposedly that car that was caught on the Exxon cam. The vehicle did leave skid marks upon the exit. That has been known. I don't know about the photos below. For more information, I don't know what kind of photos were left. So let me know what you think about this speculation. Would it be just somebody randomly guessing the time frame? Would it be somebody speculating what exactly happened, how it happened, when it happened? Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you enjoy what I'm doing, please hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. You know, when it comes to this speculation, it's very descriptive. I don't know how many people would put this information together if they weren't privileged to the information that was being stated. And this is privileged information. Let me know what you think. Do you believe that it could possibly be somebody that do you believe that it could be somebody that was with him if he wasn't alone? Do you believe it was him that was actually doing the communicating through the online forum? Let me know what you think. Okay, here's some of the questions that were on that questionnaire when he was at DeSales University that he posted on Reddit. So here's one example that shows that Mr. Koberger did use the Reddit to post these questions. Um, let's go ahead and read number one. It says, "What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point." I know that these have been discussed and they've been gone over, but is there something in these questions that could tie him into the potential crime? What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Well, according to that speculation, he walked through the tree lines parked in the back, went through the slider, left it open, went right back out the slider. But the first move would have been what? Even before all that, if he were diagramming his own crime, it would have been stalking, either online or allegedly those 12 other times, the cast information from his phone. That would have been the first move that any killer would have made in order to accomplish their goal. Find out when and how the roommates' daily routines were. Take a look and see what these girls and the guy was doing during these times. Number two says, "Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point." Now, if we're looking at Brian, did he prepare for the crime before leaving his home? Let's think about this a little bit. Did he have all this stuff already in his car, in the trunk, ready for any time that the opportunity arose? Or did he load up his car with all this stuff that he needed on the night that he allegedly committed the crime. Preparing for the crime before leaving your home. Well, he had to have. What were you thinking and feeling at this point? Well, common sense tells us that he was probably feeling anxious and he was thinking, I hope I get away with this and I hope there aren't anybody else in that home on this night to interrupt what I want to do, what I'm going to do. Because think about it, if he was stalking them on social media, I don't remember, I didn't go through their social media accounts. I didn't go through the Instagram, the TikToks, any of that stuff. But I remember seeing other creators talk about it. Was there statuses that told, okay, could there have been a status that said, hey, we just got back from the football game, gonna take a nap, blank. Okay, we just got up, we're heading to the corner club, blank. Okay, we're leaving the corner club, we're heading to the grub truck, blank. Okay, just got a ride share back to the house, blank. So if he was watching the social media, were these statuses or pictures being put on their social medias for him to stalk them, to know when to get ready, to feel the excitement rising in him that he was about to commit a murder, and thinking exactly who he was going to commit that murder on? On to the next question. Before leaving, is there anything else that you did before leaving his house? Is there anything else that he did? I'm pretty certain that if he did the crime, he didn't sit and pray about it. He didn't sit and try to talk himself out of it. He might have, but I doubt it. What do you think he did before leaving his house? Y'all help me out here, okay? Write your answers in the comments. Before leaving his house, is there anything else that he did? I would say chances are he shaved his body from head to toe, other than the bushy eyebrows, which he might have been better off to shave those bad boys off. Then you couldn't have really known who it was. What else could he have done? Gone over in his mind the plan one last time. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? It's go time. There's no backing out no matter what. Who's first? Who's second? Who's third? Who's fourth? And what happens if this happens? What happens if this person shows up? What happens if these people show up? What happens if during the crime, partiers start showing up? People that usually frequent the house start showing up? That's one thing that's never been discussed that I just thought about. If you're preparing for this, it's pretty brazen to think that you're going to be in there during a time when nobody's going to show up to come party. Because supposedly people were in and out of that house all the time. It was unregulated, it was any time of the night. But during this specific time frame, nobody showed up. Is that because they knew it was going to happen? Did people know that this was going to occur? Or did they just not feel like partying that night? Nobody throughout that time frame went to that house, allegedly. Nobody tried to call Ethan, tried to text Anna, tried to text Maddie or call Maddie throughout the middle of the night. No one that we know of. But how realistic does that sound? Use your thinking caps, guys. If this house was supposedly as much of a party house as they say, how did no one come in while he was doing that? Or had he already left and somebody may have came in and said, "Hey, it's okay, I'm here to help you." They got scared and they left. Is this the informant? Is this the person that bumped into Brian on the way out? Is this the person that bumped into him on the way in? Who knows? Because supposedly there was an informant that helped them catch Mr. Koberger, allegedly. Let's move on to the next question. It says, after committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? This is after the crime. He asked what you would be thinking and feeling before the crime. This is after. So let's think a little bit what Mr. Koberger or whoever did this were you thinking and feeling. Thinking, I would be going on a limb to say he was probably thinking, oh shit, what did I do? Or oh shit, I got away with it. Feeling, he was probably feeling elated, energized, a feeling of success. Because after all, he went in to do something and he accomplished it. Even if it wasn't something rewarding that most people are happy about, if he did it and succeeded without getting caught or having anybody identify him as he felt, and he didn't leave any DNA as he thought, then he would be feeling elated, full of adrenaline, his heart pumping a million miles an hour, driving off on his way to wherever he was going to go. Very scattered, not a lot of real thoughts going on. Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. See, this questionnaire is very emotionally driven, okay? Because that wording, thinking and feeling. So you think something, you feel it. You have a feeling attached to it. That is the thought process cycle. So before making your move, how did you approach the victim or the target? This is asking, before you're about to do what you did, how are you thinking and feeling? This sounds like a bunch of emotional attachment to it. Maybe that's why the crimes were so brutal. Because whoever did it did have an emotional attachment to it. They were thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. They were feeling elated that it was going down. After arriving, what step did you take prior to locating the victim or the target, i.e., the person or the object? Please detail your thoughts and your feelings. So, what step did you take once you identified who it was that you were going to kill? Think about this. Either he'd been in that house before or he'd never been in that house before. So that would have slowed him down going up those steps, going up those stairs. If he didn't know whose bedroom was who, he might have got him confused and went into the wrong bedroom first. But it sounds like he knew exactly what he was doing. His thoughts were, this is so and so's room, this is so and so's room. Here's the other two roommates' room. This is Dylan's room, this is Bethany's room, and this is an empty room. Because it almost sounds weird to think you walk in through the slider, you're going straight. Unless you've been in that house before and you understand the dynamics, you would keep going straight into the living room area because there's all those doors. How did you know that door in the kitchen, that little storage door, wasn't a bedroom? How did you know that wasn't, a storage room? How did you know this, that, and the other? Because usually, if you've never been to a place, it almost sounds, not sound, but it's almost, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. If you've never been in a house, and we've talked about it on other podcasts or whatever, but if you've never been in that house, what step did you take prior to locating the victim or the target? Did you get ready? Did you make sure that everything that you had on before you entered the house was sealed off? How did the dog not start barking like this one does? A crackling noise, and this dog goes off for seems like hours. How did that dog not start barking at all to let somebody know that there was somebody in that house? Please detail your thoughts and your feelings. What were you thinking? What did you feel? The next one says, why did you choose that victim or target over others? This question is very specific. The why question, like I've told you before, why never has an answer. Because no matter what people tell you, it's either good enough or not good enough for you. So you asking why, you may never get the truthful answer. He could have reworded it by asking what made you choose the victim or the target over others. What made him choose Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana over Dylan and Bethany? What made him choose those four instead of those two? Like I've stated in another video, the opportunity, the mental impairment, the element of surprise, and I can't ever, the mental, or no, I can't ever think of the fourth one, but I will. If you watch my other videos, you know what it is. And they'll probably come to me here in a minute. So, what made him choose that victim or target over others? Was it anger? Was it frustration? Was it the easiest target first? Because of all four of those, I would have think Maddie would have been the easiest to take out first. Not that she was less scrappy than any of the others, but the others just seemed to have a little more on them, weight wise, muscle wise. It looked like they would have had a little more knowledge in fight in them. No disrespect to Maddie, because I'm sure had she been awake, she would have put up a hell of a fight. What did you choose? What made you choose that victim or target over others? What made you choose those victims over others? Because you had every opportunity to choose other people, other houses, other locations, but you chose this one. What made you choose the victim or target over others? Now, if you look into these questions, you can fill in the blanks with what you know from the PCA. You can fill in the blanks from what you know from the information that's been spoke on, and make it make sense for yourself rather than having myself or someone else give you a direction that you can take your own self and make it make sense for you so that you don't have to sit there and wonder. You can just ask yourself, what made him choose that victim or target over others?
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and all the shit you don't do. Well, I'ma make hella sure that I don't become you. I have no regrets, yeah, I'll tie up my chest. I'll never forget what it's like to be in debt. Been stabbed in the back bed, I'll show you what.
First, being that I work in academics at a college, we pay attention, especially when there's violence associated with universities and colleges. It's tragic. I've got young kids in college. It always reminds me of that those are not always the safest environments. They are safe. We expect them to be safe. But at the same time, we realize that there's a world out there, and there are people sometimes that are, meaning to do harm to our children. And that's always concerning to me. I look at this situation. This is a high profile case. And I'm always looking to get that information, with a homicide or multiple homicides in this case. We expect to see, results fairly quickly. It doesn't always happen. But we expect that law enforcement, federal agencies get involved, and there are those suspects that are close to the victims, whether they're family, associates, classmates. Somebody close to the victim tends to be the most probable subject at the beginning. But we get a few days into it and we don't see arrests, we don't see closure, we don't see people saying that we have a suspect or we have good ideas and the community is not at risk. We're seeing the opposite. Community needs to, take precautions. I noticed that there was a professor that came out and said he's canceling class. Grades are not as important as human life. And to me, that speaks that, they're nobody's in custody, and we want to make sure that these students are safe. That's, as an academic, that is one of my, that's one of my tenets, that they come first.
And I think, part of it, people are just having a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact that 4 people were stabbed, and this person, able to stab 4 people with 2 roommates in the house and get away and still be running free now.
Right. And again, as we look at, the possibilities, obviously we look closest to the victims, and we have 4 victims, we look closest to the victims as somebody that is the subject. But when you get a few days out of this, I start to worry about those true victim crimes, the true victim homicides, whereas the victims and the suspect aren't known to each other. And this is, and I hate to use the word, but a Bundy-like situation that we, saw down in Florida many decades ago. That this is, somewhat, I'm not going to call it random, because if this individual is unknown to them, there may have been some planning, there may have been, other precursors to what was going into that, for him to, organize and go in and commit a crime like this. At the same time, I don't take out that there is somebody close to these people, somebody that saw them, somebody that went to school with them, somebody that associated with them in the community or at work or in some type of endeavor, and they became fixated on them. And we have to look at that. Or, as in some cases we look with school shootings, was this based on peer rejection or social rejection? Was somebody, maybe have a weapon fantasy, let me back up. Or maybe somebody has a weapon fanization, especially with a knife, because when we see mass killings, typically that's a firearm. And for somebody to use a knife is unique. I think that if this is somebody in the community that is still there, the police are probably going out and talking to people and saying, who may have felt a social or peer rejection from one or all of these individuals, who may have been talking about, morbid things or fascinated with knives, and other things that may be something that law enforcement is going to want to focus on. And when we talk about the FBI's involvement and the capacity that they have to, again, look at the psychology of the suspect and the crime scene, the victimology, these are things that they're going to be examining and following up on.
So definitely some profiling. I mean, I think we've heard that they are doing that.
And I hope they are. I mean, in a case like this, whether it's 24 hours old or it's a few days old, that is one of the resources that the FBI can bring. And it's not just the people in Idaho. I mean, you're reaching out. The one strength, many strengths that the FBI has, but one of those is they can bring very smart people, into this, that aren't in Idaho, that aren't in Utah, that are literally across the country, but have specialties in these areas. They also bring, great investigative powers. They bring, the ability to look at a lot of different investigative leads, electronic. We leave a footprint everywhere we go now. There are cameras everywhere. We have satellites. We have other, tools that the FBI has to be able to track people down that may have been in that area or saying something or doing something. They bring those great resources and money sometimes, with other, means of getting, source information. And so that's going to be powerful and very helpful, hopefully, in this case.
And do you think it complicates things given the fact that, we've heard this was kind of a party house, it's on Greek Row, all of these people are in the Greek community, a lot of friends going in and out. I mean, I just imagine, trying to narrow down if you did have some DNA, that would be really challenging, I imagine.
It could. I mean, the fact that this is a college town, this is a college community, and when I say that, the neighborhood that they work, they live in, the area that it happened, people in and out, the characteristics of a college town and a college area and a college house. And that throws it in. The fact that they are in the Greek, the fraternities, sororities, people that they associate with, there's larger numbers. But we also have to remember we've got the whole college campus. We have the town. We have the people that associate with the college students and these specific students in particular. Those are all areas that you have to run down the leads. And again, I'll go back to the Moscow Police Department is a certain size police department. They have specific capabilities. Bringing in those federal partners, bringing in the state police, you're able to run down a lot more leads than simply if you had 3 detectives trying to gather everything, because there is going to be a need to interview and contact and do research and analysis on a lot of different people, let alone when we start talking about that electronic footprint, the surveillance, the cameras, the phone pings, the cell phone towers that had people there, again, and going into other technologies that our federal partners probably have and hopefully are going to utilize in this case. And that takes resources. It takes, boots on the ground, but it also takes resources to have those expertise. When you add to that, the fact that the FBI brings, for instance, the BAU, behavioral and psychological profiling, that has to be broken down. Victimology has to be done on all the victims as to who they were, what was going on in their lives, who are they surrounding themselves. Then you're going to look at the crime scene. And that crime scene is probably going to have a significant amount of information for those people in the FBI that are going to look at the behavior of the suspect. What happened? what type of crimes were committed during that. Was there kidnappings or assaults, or was there a sexual assault? Was it an ambush? Was it overkill? Did it appear to be organized? Did the person bring the weapon with them? Did they take a weapon from the house? All those things are going to tell you a lot about who the suspect was and why those victims were chosen. And as I said, if this is a true victim crime, then I think that it becomes a little more difficult, because we're not dealing with people necessarily in that community. We may
And
be
by
dealing with
true
somebody-
victim, kind of remind me what you mean by true victim.
You bet. True victim crimes are those crimes where the victim and the suspect are going to have no connection. These are, when we think about a Ted Bundy, when we think about, a serial killer like Israel Keys, these are, the victims are chosen, the crimes are well planned, they're organized, but there's a purpose to that. And I think what's interesting is if this person is outside their group, family, friends, associates, Greek community, college community, the actual community in Moscow, Idaho, that has a connection to the family or the college. If they're outside that, it again becomes a little more difficult to identify that individual. If they are within that group, we're going to be able to focus, and we're probably at some point going to contact them and interview them and talk to them about, if they have any information.
And this might be hard to answer, but I mean, do you think they know who this person is at this point, and they're just not saying?
And here's the thing, in that profiling, we look at what are potential, you get some great subject matter experts in there, people that can look at crime scenes and victimology. And although it may not be perfectly scientific, you have some really experienced investigators with some good backgrounds, that can look at this and say, what does this appear to be based on what we have? Is it revenge? Is it power? Is it anger? Is it meant to terrorize them? Was there a financial advantage to them? Was it robbery or burglary? And they can look at a lot of those and maybe then push themselves out to who may be involved in that. Now, I'll say this, one of the things that with my experience in being involved with the FBI and some of their investigations, one of the best things that they do is keep a good secret. And I think that as I work, in different things now as a private investigator, both on both sides, that is an important trait. I have to tell you that when I worked in investigations, we had what we call rule number one. Rule number one is don't say anything, because that information needs to be kept close. We can't get the media or family sometimes even knowing that information, because again, it can tip people off, and sometimes minutes are important. It can redirect people's behavior and get them more prepared when we come knocking on their door, or surveillance, or wiretaps and things that we may be doing. And so I don't think it's unusual for the police to absolutely, and the FBI, not to say anything. This could be a good sign, meaning that they got a pretty good idea who this is, and they are working hard to identify them, to get the evidence, to move to the next point. At the same time, again, if we look at this as maybe a true victim or somebody that's outside that social circle of theirs, we may not know who they are right now. And that, to me, from the possibility that we don't know who they are, we don't have any information. This is not, and I'll get, with the FBI tracking, is this something that's happened somewhere else in the country in the last few days or weeks or months? Is this, method that they used, or is the MO in this case similar to one other one, or multiples? It may be. And then we have to worry about serial killers or spree killers. But, again, I as what they've put out right now, I think there's going to be somebody closer in the community. I think it's going to be somebody that may not necessarily be close to them, but close enough in that circle that they're going to be able to identify and then move forward with hopefully putting together a good case, so that they can make an arrest and then move on to prosecute and get justice for these kids.
Yeah, and they have called it. They repeatedly have called it a targeted attack.
Right.
So what does that tell you? That like you said, it's someone within their.
it's probably somebody that is going to be in that circle. Doesn't mean that they're right up against them. You know, we when we look at homicide cases, violent crime cases, a lot of time, you know, we have to go one step away. A spouse, a family member, you know, then we move a little bit further away. You know, associates and friends, neighbors, coworkers, you know, classmates. Then we move a little bit, you know, further away. Ex-boyfriends, girlfriends, ex-spouses, people that we dated. And again, when they say, you know, when they make a statement like that, then you look at what is the motive? Is it revenge? Is it, you know, peer rejection, social rejection, you know, and especially within those, maybe those Greek communities where people are either in or they're out. And that, you know, especially at a college age, that can maybe, you know, put out maybe an angered, you know, an anger that goes, and then, you know, what, maybe a terror response, you know, meaning that, you know, I want to terrorize somebody. I want them to make them pay. And so I think those are, when we look at the revenge, the power, the anger, or, you know, maybe causing terror, those may be some of the motivations to somebody closer than a random true victim crime, meaning that the individual is passing through, or the individual may be from the area, but, you know, not connected to the victims. Those are, you know, good possibilities at that point, especially if that is what we're hearing from law enforcement at this time.
And again, what does it tell you, given the fact that this person used a knife?
That, you know, it's interesting because when we have multiple killers or mass killings, we have, you know, we've had, you know, school shootings or school deaths where we have a, you know, a school place or workplace, but higher probabilities it's going to be a gun. The fact that it's a knife may tell us, you know, that this is more personal. It may mean that the individual, you know, could be as simple as the individual doesn't have the capacity to possess a gun. They're restricted. They don't have the ability to get a gun. They can't afford to buy a gun. You know, it may have been, again, if we're looking at maybe a revenge type of thing, it may have been something that was meant to be scary, and it cascaded, and that was the only weapon that they had on them. You know, when we see brute force and knives, sometimes those are disorganized in the sense that the individual uses that knife or a blunt force that they find at the scene, you know, at that time. Opportunistic, you know, meaning that I'm coming in the house to burglarize it or commit a theft, and I get caught, and my only, you know, weapon at that time is a knife. But I do say there's a violence and a terror when a knife is used. Especially with the fact that 4 people were killed, not 1.
Do you think this suspect should be scared at this point?
You know, it depends. And I always say that, you know, with some, if this is, and again, if this is somebody that has done this before, they're organized, they are in that group of what we would consider a serial killer. I think the fact that they haven't been discovered is part of what I think empowers them. And it, you know, is concerning to us. So if that's the category of person, they're probably less, you know, because of their, you know, their confidence, their, you know, antisocial behavior, some of the traits that go along with people that are involved in those kind of crimes. I don't think that they're too worried. I mean, when we look at, you know, successful serial killers that avoid law enforcement for a period of time, that's one of the things that they really, you know, kind of, that's a trait that they set themselves up so there's a low probability that they're going to be discovered right away. You know, but eventually good police work, the you know, citizens involved in making comments about what's going on, and a little bit of luck. I always think, you know, you can only be so good, and luck always runs out. And that's what we sometimes hang our hat in law enforcement as success with. If this is somebody in the community, this is somebody connected a little closer to the social, they should be worried. The truth is that if that is the person, they should be greatly worried, because I go back to, we leave a footprint. Everything that we do, things are different than 30 years ago when I started in law enforcement. I mean, there is the technology out there, the ability that law enforcement, especially at the federal level, the ability that we can leverage and exploit things within technology makes it very, very powerful. License plate readers, video cameras, surveillance cameras, just about everywhere we go. People are out and about on social media. They're taking pictures, they're taking videos, and they don't always realize that picture has somebody in the background, or has a timestamp or a place. the fact that wherever we go with our phones, we're leaving a physical, footprint. I think an Idaho case that is a good example is it takes some time, but with the Daybell case over in eastern Idaho, the FBI sat down and they were able to put together, literally second by second cell phone locations of where people were on a specific date and time. We have to remember that we have satellites, a lot of satellites, private and public satellites that are flying over, taking pictures all the time. And those pictures can be used as a resource for law enforcement to track people down and see who was in the area and, who was moving and how things changed. All those resources are there. And so when I say this is a local person, these are things that are going to be looked at. The fact that it's a knife, I think, is also important. If that person is local, the question that I would be asking, significantly in the college community and the community around there, anybody fixated with knives, anybody fixated, with the knife that they've mentioned that they're looking for is a military, style knife. So who's got a fascination with the military, especially somebody that's not in the military, failed military, maybe tried to get in, but for various reasons couldn't. But they still may be fascinated with with that weapon, because that's a unique weapon that people may use. Idaho's a hunting state, and so knives are not uncommon with regards to the recreating and that. But that knife, I think, is unique. If that is in fact the style of knife, I think it's a unique knife, and it tells us maybe a little bit about who that person is that has it.
And you've kind of touched on this earlier, but just kind of explain to people, what are detectives, investigators, what are they doing right now?
I think that hopefully the victimology of all four people was a real highlight at the beginning. The fact that they've got multiple resources, state police, FBI, we can do multiple things at one time. We're running down the victimology. We are doing analysis of the crime scene. That crime scene is telling us a lot about what happened. What was the sequence of what happened? What type of other activities occurred before or after? Were the bodies staged after they were killed? Were the bodies, in any way, manipulated? Was there assaults on the bodies? What happened? The defensive wounds. What were people aware of what was going on? Were they trying to defend themselves? Was there a fight? The thing about knives is, with a lot of knife wounds, once you stab, unfortunately, liquid starts to get on the knives, and as people stab, it's not uncommon for the knife literally to slip and cut the suspect's hand. And so if that happened, we're going to have, blood and DNA mixed in. And so, it's going to be very important as they analyze the blood. Is there a mixture of not the victim's blood versus maybe getting the suspect's blood? Was there blood, did we find droplets as the person left the house and outside? Those are going to be critical because they're going to tell us, what happened. I think, the question of the detectives and the FBI is going to say, was this an organized crime scene or was it disorganized? Was this planned, unplanned, or was it a mix? Were there things that are actually, within the traits of what happened, are there mixed? And then, really trying to focus on what was the motive? Was there overkill in how many, stab wounds these people, made? Was there stab wounds specifically to the chest, the neck, and the head, which would tell us about maybe some anger, some rage that the subject had at those people, or at somebody else that may have been, that they may have been targeting. Sex assault, unfortunately, is, one of those determining factors as to, was there any, type of assault beforehand? And if there was,
they did rule out sexual assault. That they said that they didn't find any evidence of that. So
that's good. And so again, because, with sex assault homicides, there's a lot of literature out there, but, again, what I teach and kind of foundation, what I have is there's 4 types of suspects there. And so when you have a sex assault homicide, you're going to focus on 4 types of suspects and who fits into those categories and those traits and those personalities. The fact that there's not, again, goes back to what is the motivation? Revenge, social rejection, anger, power, money, financial, profit, and like I said, human behavior. And that's the FBI with the behavioral analysis. The FBI is looking at this from what are common human behaviors that these suspects have. It's not always perfect, but we are able to take human behavior And in a lot of cases, those things replicate themselves in these crimes. And we're able to find, and that's again where we're finding some of those personalities. It's not scientifically perfect. There are, high probabilities, low probabilities, medium probabilities that we may have. And we sometimes know that even though we think it's this person, when we actually retrospectively go back, we were off and wrong. And I think the FBI has done a good job from when my dad was in there in the 80s doing this till now, is that they go back and they see what did they miss, and they learn from that. And there's great lessons learned. And I think in this case, the nice thing is that we have a lot of experience probably with the FBI and the local police and the state police, and they're probably using every tool on their tool belt to find out who did this.
And what does it tell you that, there's been crime tape at this house since Sunday and they're still there processing this scene?
Yeah, I teach investigations, and this is one of those things that, when I work on the defense side of things as a defense investigator, you get a first time first. And I teach that in my investigations class. You only get a first time first. If you walk away from that scene and think, oh my goodness, we got to go back, there's a possibility that somebody's altered it, tainted it, removed something. Don't give up the scene until you have to. That's, one of the things that I sometimes see, and this is a big case, and I don't think they would do it, but in other cases, law enforcement gives up the possibility of gaining more evidence, or just kind of engages in a mediocre investigation and leaves things, and then maybe comes back later. And, throughout my career, I saw that happen where, we release a scene and a few hours later, somebody's calling us and saying, hey, I found something. That is not good for your investigation. And so the fact is, hold that scene as long as you need it. It could be a day, it could be 5 days, it could be 2 weeks. Hold it, because as we look, we may not have got it on the first look, but we still own that scene. It's not tainted, and we can go back in there and collect that evidence as if it's the first time. First time first.